So when I was like 5 years old, that was kind of when I decided that I just wasn't going to wear a prosthetic anymore. Just wasn't for me. Didn't really want to subscribe to that because for me it felt incredibly false. It felt like I was attaching something fake to my body that wasn't there in the first place, so why do I need to replicate it? I couldn't comprehend that idea that I needed to put this fake thing on my arm to fit into society. Like I couldn't, it didn't work in my brain. Like 2 and 2 was not making 4, 2 and 2 was making like 57, so it didn't make any sense for me. There are still certain things in this world that I just can't do, and I need like help with. And I think that kind of annoys people because I look so quote unquote not disabled until I take my jumper off, and then people are like, oh my god, like where's her hand gone? I'm like, it was never there in the first place. Like, that's not my fault, that's your fault. Done that for quite a while, but when I was younger I used to mess about with it quite a lot. I actually I once got kicked out of a nightclub because for Halloween I dressed as someone like a lifeguard who had their arm missing. So I went in with an arm, and then like halfway through the night I like ripped off, like it was like a fake hand that I got from like a dressing up store, and threw it into the crowd. And I was like screaming and I was like ah, which I thought was quite funny, and it was quite funny, but the nightclub didn't think it was that funny.
Oh my god. Does your relationship change because you are able to pretty much hide that you are disabled? So does this change where like let's say you're wearing a jacket and you take your jacket off and then people see your disability, so have people treated you differently?
When I was younger, probably, because I don't think people know in general how to approach disability, because we've never really had a place or a time or any form of education about how we talk to disabled people. Like that hasn't existed for anyone, and so you're gonna like it or lump it, and if you don't like it then it's not my problem. And it actually says way more about you, the fact that you can't comprehend that past my disability. That says so much more about you as a person than it does about me. And that's what I always think, like, if you don't like me because I'm disabled, then like that's your problem, it's not mine. I think I'm a naturally quite confident person, and I like me. And I'm aware that I'm very fortunate to say that, but I think like I'm stuck with myself for the rest of my life. So if I don't like myself and I don't like my body, it's just going to be an argument every single day, and it's not going to be like a good headspace to be in. It's not going to be like the stuff you want to be hearing, and that's not good for anyone around me or myself. So yeah, I'm quite confident in who I am, and that I like myself. And it's a really interesting one, isn't it? Because I am very proud of being disabled. On the flip side, I can totally understand why some people aren't, and they really struggle with it, because disability is not easy. It's absolutely not easy. The disabled existence is not easy. You are constantly fighting daily issues. You are constantly fighting ableism. You're constantly fighting ableist people. You're trying to change this society that it is not built for you. Full stop. Like, society today is not built for disabled people to succeed. The infrastructure is not in place. The support is not in place. It does not exist. So it's absolutely knackering to keep fighting those systems. And so I think, what you said is actually super imperative, that sometimes disability is really freaking hard. Born disabled, so I don't know any different. I don't know what life is like with two hands. Like, that experience is not something that I've ever had. So my whole life I've always had to adapt. I have always had to figure out how to do stuff differently, and that's just been from when I was born. I literally don't know any other way. And actually I think if I was to go to like some psychologist or some science behind the brain and stuff, I think my thought pattern would be very different from average Joe blogs, because I have to look at what is being done and then look at how someone does it who is non-disabled, and then I have to translate that into my body and how that would work and how I would adapt that.
Hello, welcome to my podcast, Two Mics, One Joe Suit. I am Joe Suit, and I'll be giving my to Brooke. Brooke is a badass CrossFit athlete who was at one point the top 20th woman in the world. All her life she was born without a right hand and wrist and elbow. She's also a fellow podcaster called Disabled and Proud, so that's dope. Let's start it from your previous episode and let's lead up with, are you disabled and proud?
I love that. Yes, I absolutely am. I am disabled and proud.
Okay. It's a much different answer than what I expressed, but if you want to know my answer, you better watch me on her podcast episode, which is awesome, obviously, because I'm in it. But anyway, this is all about Brooke today. So let's talk about your absolute distaste for artificial limbs since you were 5 years old.
Yeah, I do. So when I was like 5 years old, that was kind of when I decided that I just wasn't going to wear a prosthetic anymore. Just wasn't for me. Didn't really want to subscribe to that because for me it felt incredibly false. It felt like I was attaching something fake to my body that wasn't there in the first place, so why do I need to replicate it? I couldn't comprehend that idea that I needed to put this fake thing on my arm to fit into society. Like I couldn't, it didn't work in my brain. Like 2 and 2 was not making 4, 2 and 2 was making like 57. So it didn't make any sense for me. And to be fair, I think it's probably the best thing that ever happened to me or like the best decision I ever made, because I've never needed one and I never want one. And that's not to say that people don't need them, because there are absolutely people that do, and it provides a lifeline for a lot of people. It just didn't for me, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It didn't work for me, and it wasn't for me.
You mentioned that there are prosthetics that do help you, so have you ever revisited getting a prosthetic to hold, I guess, something with 2 hands or something? I don't know what options you have available.
So when I kind of first started doing gym stuff, I kind of dabbled in the idea that maybe I would need something extra, because I wasn't really sure how to work machines, and I didn't really know. I didn't really understand the gym space in itself, so I was trying to figure out how I would make these things work for me, like for someone with one hand. So I actually went to my local limb clinic and I was like, this is what I'm thinking about doing. Are you able to help me? And like, can you help me figure out what I might need and what I won't need? And bless them, they were incredible. And they did. And I got a prosthetic and I wore it once or twice and I was like, this just isn't doing what I want it to do. This isn't doing what I need it to do. Forgot how much I hated them. Forgot how uncomfortable they were. Forgot how heavy they were. And like, just haven't used it since. So yeah, I think that was all of like, I had it, maybe I used it twice, I think, in the gym, and I just realized that it just wasn't for me, and it's so much better for me to be able to adapt it myself. And like, I love using my brain in that way, being able to like look at something and kind of deconstructing it and making it apply to my body. So for me, that's way more fun and makes a lot more sense too.
It's like, if we were talking about like you're missing your arm, I don't really like consider you missing your arm. Like, I feel like if you're missing your arm, you're missing like your shoulder down, but you have like your shoulder, and I guess you have like a bicep of some kind, and then you don't have like elbow, wrist, and obviously the hand. So like, is there like a technical term that you have an arm? And I don't know, it's weird terminology.
No, so a lot of people say they're limb different because every like limb different is completely different. So what I have is going to be completely different to what someone else has who also doesn't have an arm or a hand or a wrist or whatever. So it kind of falls under like a very general umbrella term of limb difference. And it's a bit like disability, isn't it? Really, like disability is such an umbrella term for so many different things. To try and encapsulate what it exactly is quite difficult, really.
So this is going to be a weird question to you. Since you're able to do most things, I'm assuming, do you consider yourself disabled?
Yeah, I do. there are so many things that, even though I can do them, there are certain things that I absolutely can't do. Like, tying my shoelaces, for example, took me years to figure out, like a really long time to figure out, because I don't have the dexterity in my hands. I don't have that ability to clap. I don't have the ability to use both of my hands and do things like open a door and hold a file at the same time. Like, I don't have that ability. So whilst I do have two hands and, like, you know, two elbows, there are still certain things in this world that I just can't do, and I need, like, help with. And I think that kind of annoys people, because I look so quote unquote not disabled until I take my jumper off, and then people are like, oh my god, like, where's her hand gone? I'm like, it was never there in the first place. That's not my fault, that's your fault.
Well, I know we talked about my episode, how, like, I like to fuck with people why I have my disability. Like, do you fuck with people why you lost your hand? Or are you just a normal person?
No, not really, to be fair. When I was younger, I definitely did. Like, I definitely would make up stories about how I'd lost my arm and, like, a shark had bit it off. But, like, I was very young and very silly, and I didn't really understand the disabled landscape as I do now. So I haven't done that for quite a while, but when I was younger, I used to mess about with it quite a lot. I actually I once got kicked out of a nightclub because for Halloween I dressed as someone, like a lifeguard who had their arm missing. So I went in with an arm, and then, like, halfway through the night I, like, ripped off, like, it was like a fake hand that I got from, like, a dressing up store, and threw it into the crowd. And I was, like, screaming, and I was like, ah, which I thought was quite funny, and it was quite funny, but the nightclub didn't think it was that funny.
Oh my god. That's okay. I mean, next party I'm coming, I'm gonna invite you. That sounds dope as fuck.
It was really good. It was a good time. I had a great time.
Yeah, like, that's okay. Okay, so I know in our episode we were talking about making assumptions, and well, I'm gonna make an assumption about you because I think that's just normal human nature, you know. So I want to say that I think you had a more normal upbringing. Like, sure, you had some shit. You had some that were shit to you, but you never had, like, deep depression episode. So, am I right?
Yeah, I mean, you are right. I have, you know, touch wood.
Bingo.
Never suffered from particularly poor mental health, but I've had my struggles, and I think everybody has struggles, and some people's struggles are a lot deeper than others. But I'm quite naturally optimistic anyway. But also I'm quite a realist as well, so I don't tend to overinflate situations where I think, you know, things could be better or things could be worse. I'm quite, like, straight down the line, and, like, I know kind of what to expect, and I think that serves me quite well sometimes. So yeah, you're very good at assumptions.
Oh, I assume a lot of things, and I'm usually nailing on the head for a lot of things. I'm good for nailing sexual things too, but we're gonna keep it PG for this episode. But some reason I'm able to nail it exactly. I don't know, it's just hidden gifts I can't express to anyone, but my parents are not proud of me, but hey, it's a unique skill set. I don't know when I'll use it, but
Hello.
It's a cool party trick. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I think it's based on like life experiences, but I think it's also, I think we like grew, I don't know like what happened, but like something in our society made us like we can't judge people anymore, and I'm just like, I keep rejecting them. So like people have called me a nihilist. You know what a nihilist is, right?
Please explain to me.
So a nihilist is just someone that doesn't follow society's standards of things. So like they believe like life is meaningless. Like we're just here to like really do nothing. Like we don't believe in traditions or anything like that. We're kind of against the system, and it's all orchestrated by human beings, basically. That everything is created. So I believe in that. So I just think like as human beings, we judge people based on how they dress and such. Like our deep human characteristics of men and women, it's just how we're ingrained to do. So like men like to be powerful and strong and lead and all of that, and more women like to be like, they like to sit around and such. And yet there'll be some women that would love to be in leadership roles, and they are in leadership roles and such. But I think like most women rather love to be more down to earth. Like let's like go to a beach, for example, right? What are the men doing? They're digging holes. Why? I don't know. It's just fun to do. And then what are women doing? You know, they're sitting on a chair, just lounging around, getting a tan, whatever. So I feel like that's such a raw what men do versus what women do. But then people are trying to change that, and like I do get it that like it kind of sounds sexist in a way, but like I think women deserve like equal pay and, you know, like rights and all that. Like, I mean, I don't know who wouldn't want that, but like I feel like sometimes they're like shooting for the stars, and I feel like some of them don't want to. You know, like not every woman wants to be in leadership roles, right, or anything like that. The opportunity is there, but I don't think they want to be there. You know.
I think it's really interesting to talk about gender dynamics, isn't it? Because I think, yes, absolutely, women 100% deserve equal pay. Women deserve to have all the opportunities that men have. That's not something that we need to argue or like have a conversation about, because that's correct. You know, women are equal to men, regardless of who you are and what you think.
I don't know. They're like equal, for example. Equal is really hard to define equal. I think men have their pros and cons, and then women have their pros and cons, and we just mesh really well. Like, you know, if a man is versing a woman in like a basketball game, like 99% of the time, the man is gonna dominate the women. Like that's just clear as day. Like they have their pros and their cons. Like I can't say we're equal to each other. You have your strengths, I have my strengths. We can make it work. Some don't. Like I get it. But I don't know if equality is the right word, but I just think of like I think we know what our strengths and weaknesses are, and let's make each other work better to a better society or life or relationship, a better partnership in that sense. Instead of fighting each other, let's work together. Not like our sex is better than this sex. And it's like, no, let's just use our strengths for what our strengths are. Like don't put us down. Like lift yourselves up a little bit too.
Yeah, I think it is. It's still a really interesting topic, though, isn't it? Because I completely understand what you're saying in terms of like physicality when you're referring to a basketball game. Because, you know, physical strength between men and women is like, men will always be stronger because that's their genetic makeup, whereas women won't have that. But I think it's more about equality in terms of the opportunities that are given, because quite often men are given way more opportunity to progress in the fields that they want to progress in that women aren't. And I think that's where the equality lies, is the equal opportunity. It's giving that space that men have traditionally had for so long, also giving that space to women and allowing women to flourish in those roles if they so choose. Equally, if they don't want to be there, then they don't have to be there, but it's giving that opportunity so that they can flourish in those areas.
I mean, it's hard to say when you're a man talking about women's things, because as much as I have like access to statistics and stuff, it's also a lot different when you're actually a woman and they're dealing with the problem. It's like there's problems that you can't express, that I can't really relate to, understand. I mean, I guess I find it we're actually connected to the disability world, because I think it's a great connection of the two. I think I relate more as a disabled person to women and persons of color, because they deal with sexism or racism, depending on the race, because we deal with an invisible barrier that we can't explain. Like you can't explain someone being ableist to someone. Yeah, you can explain the concept like, oh, they're not hiring you because you're not, that you're disabled. Like you can explain that, but you don't. It's hard to explain like the daily interaction that happens to you, that sometimes you notice, sometimes you don't. Even if you're, let's say you're a regular person standing next to me, sometimes you won't even see it, even if we're together. It is something that you can only experience if you are truly disabled. So I think it's a great segue to answer you. So like, does your relationship change because you're able to pretty much hide that you are disabled? So does this change where like, let's say you're wearing a jacket and you take your jacket off and then people see your disability, so have people treated you differently?
When I was younger, probably, because I don't think people know in general how to approach disability, because we've never really had a place or a time or any form of education about how we talk to disabled people. Like that hasn't existed for anyone. And so when I was younger, and I've never ever made it like a thing that I've hidden my disability, because I'm very upfront with the fact that I don't have a hand, I don't have part of my arm. It's never going to be
You're
there.
disabled and proud.
Exactly, like it's never going to exist. So why would I try and be something that I'm not? For me, that idea of trying to be something that I'm not is something that I think would cause a lot of mental anguish for me, because I can't comprehend it. And so maybe when I was younger, when people didn't really know how to react or how to like navigate the situation, but actually as I've got older, and maybe because I show up a bit more online, people know that I'm like disabled and proud. People know that I don't have a hand. People also know that I like work outside of my podcast in disability, so like I'm quite happily say I'm quite well versed in it. So as I've got older, people have treated me the same, I think. But when I was younger, I think there was definitely a difference between when I had a jacket on and when I had a jacket off. And obviously in the UK, there's like seasons, right? So we have like like a definite winter, and then like a very, very small 2-week long summer. So in the summer, like you're not going to be wearing jumpers, you're not going to be wearing like coats and jackets and stuff. So it's very, very obvious. And people in the UK naturally in general kind of freak out about seeing people's bodies anyway, because we are prudish and like we have this whole quintessentially British thing where we like don't know where to look. So I think, you know, during that time people were like, oh god, like her hand doesn't exist, where do I look, what do? I don't know how to act. But I think as I've got older, I've got a bit more like, yeah, this is exactly who I am, like, you know, and I've always been that way. But I think as you get older, you gain more confidence in who you are as a person as well, and that just comes with age.
I mean, I think we have very unrelatable experiences where my disability is more obvious, like really can hide it. But like I feel like if you just get over the shock value of yourself, it like you can almost like, it always kind of funny like you freak them out for like a minute. Does that make sense? You can kind of see like the confusion in their like in their eyes and like their face, and like they didn't know how to compute. You know, it's always kind of funny to watch. And like you're interacting with them, like, hey, how are you? And they're still like confused, and they're like, hi, you know, like it's strange. But I think like your disability, maybe it's just that I'm surrounded by more disabled people. It's not as much to me. But I think to me, if I just push past that and express that I'm like a decent, funny, or whatever person, or like just basically a normal person, if I get past that 1 minute, I think it's usually okay after that. I think it's just, I just know that my disability is just strange, that no one has ever seen it before, and it's like the reaction will obviously be just awe and like what the fuck and everything. Like cool. I think like this to me to get past that, and you know, I think at the end of the day, I think they come down to their personality. You know, like are they more open, like they're either they are like you or they're not gonna like you based on who you are anyway. So it's like you might as well go in with the same energy you do with everybody else, and if they're gonna like you, they're gonna talk to you normally. If you don't, then you just have to like not talk to them and just like move on with your life, because like there's no point of trying to convince someone to like, hey, I'm a normal person, please respect me. It's like we don't got time for that, and like you gotta you gotta like change your attitude about it. Like,
it's very much like you're going to like it or lump it. And if you don't like it, then it's not my problem. And it actually says way more about you. The fact that you can't comprehend that past my disability, that says so much more about you as a person than it does about me. And that's what I always think, like, if you don't like me because I'm disabled, then like that's your fucking problem. It's not mine.
Interesting. Like, I wish I could have a time where I could hide my disability. And I know people treat me way differently, and I'm assuming you understand the privilege that you're able to hide a disability, and I'm sure that has helped you a lot in many ways.
Yeah, I mean, I don't actually tend to hide my disability though. Like, I the only time that you can't tell is when I wear a jacket, and that's it. Mm-hmm. So even if I'm in jumpers and stuff, for me it's way too cumbersome to even try and hide the fact that I'm disabled. Like, a spare piece of material flapping around my body is actually way worse than just having my jumper rolled up and having my arm out. Like, I wouldn't even say that that's a bad thing. I think it's a great thing that I wear my jumpers, I cut my sleeves so that my arm is free. So I very, very rarely hide the fact that I'm disabled, and I also wouldn't ever go out of my way to hide the fact that I'm disabled, because it is a part of who I am. But I can completely understand that on the surface, if you see me walking down the street, I would be like, quote unquote, non-disabled passing. And I don't think I've had any experiences where it's worked in my benefit, because I very rarely don't talk about it. So, I don't know, maybe it has and I'm just unaware of it. That could be a big thing too, I don't know. But I like to think I'm quite an aware person, and I understand my privileges, and I'm aware that I'm very lucky to be in the position that I'm in. And I have got a lot of privilege, but equally I'm aware of that, and I don't disregard that either.
So it's clear to talking to you for the past 22 minutes that you're a very confident person. So have you always been confident growing up?
Yeah, always. I think I'm a naturally quite confident person, and I like me. And I'm aware that I'm very fortunate to say that, but I think like I'm stuck with myself for the rest of my life. So if I don't like myself and I don't like my body, it's just going to be an argument every single day, and it's not going to be like a good headspace to be in. It's not going to be like the stuff you want to be hearing, and that's not good for anyone around me or myself. So yeah, I'm quite confident in who I am, and that I like myself. And I once heard someone say that hell on earth doesn't exist. Hell is in between your two ears if you don't get on with yourself. And actually, I thought that's probably true, because if you don't get on with yourself and you don't like yourself and you don't love yourself, then everything is just a little bit harder. So yeah, I'm quite happy and quite confident in who I am.
I like how our last episode is tying into this episode. I think a lot of it accountability too. I think that quote that you just said had a lot more to do with people that are like regular people. That makes sense. That they can like move all their limbs and such. And I think there's like a good amount of disabled people that even like sometimes even regular people that like don't want to. It's not that they don't want to die, but they don't want to live either. And like if you tell them like, hey, the world is ending on Sunday, they'll be like, okay, cool. I don't have to go to work on Monday. Like, okay, Yeah. Like I think like some of it, a lot of like society quotes are more catered to like regular people, and I think some of us just have a really, really hard life that it is hard to fathom. Like I know like I'm like in the 1% of like the worst people on the planet with my disease and stuff, and I realized that like if the world was ending on Sunday, I'd be like, cool, I don't have to like edit any more episodes, and I'll be like, okay, awesome, I'm just binge watch like the last season of You after finish and Succession. But I think just I think that some of us have. I don't think everyone is as disabled, as proud as you are. Even I said I'm not proud of myself. Like, I'm proud of my accomplishment, but I'm not proud of my disability because it sucks, and I think it sucks. I want to stop talking about myself because I feel like I've been talking about myself too much, and that's not a good podcast host at all.
But I think this is great, actually, because it leads for conversation. And I think sometimes the best podcasts are ones that are actually a bit more of a conversation than necessarily like taking the lead, whoever it may be. But I think what you said there's like, it's a really interesting one, isn't it? Because I am very proud of being disabled. On the flip side, I can totally understand why some people aren't, and they really struggle with it, because disability is not easy. It's absolutely not easy. The disabled existence is not easy. You are constantly fighting daily issues. You are constantly fighting ableism. You're constantly fighting ableist people. You're trying to change this society that it is not built for you. Full stop. Like, society today is not built for disabled people to succeed. The infrastructure is not in place. The support is not in place. It does not exist. So it's absolutely knackering to keep fighting those systems. And so I think, you know, what you said is actually super imperative, that sometimes disability is really freaking hard.
Yeah, I think going based on someone else's comment, and she said most white people would not shut the fuck up during the episode, and like she commented that you just let me talk, and I was like, yes, that's like what I wanted. So like, I'm just trying to like keep that same energy with other people too. But we both know if the host is talking more, it's because they're not talking much, so you gotta fill the gaps. But you're obviously you're a charismatic person, so I want to hear you shine more. So we're gonna talk about you more. You know, this is my podcast. I'm in control here. So did your disability ever stop you, or you just always found a way to do something anyways?
So I think this is a really interesting point of conversation, is that I was born disabled, so I don't know any different. I don't know what life is like with two hands. Like, that experience is not something that I've ever had. So my whole life, I've always had to adapt. I have always had to figure out how to do stuff differently, and that's just been from when I was born. I literally don't know any other way. And actually, I think if I was to go to like some, you know, psychologist or some science behind the brain and stuff, I think my thought pattern would be very different from average Joe blogs, because I have to look at what is being done and then look at how someone does it who is non-disabled, and then I have to translate that into my body and how that would work and how I would adapt that. So I think I've always adapted stuff, and I've probably got it down to a really fine art now, where it's like it's second nature. I don't even have to really think about it all that much. So I've always just turned up and had to adapt. I don't know how not to now. And like, you know, to the point where sometimes I think about how I would do something and I try and explain it to someone who's got two hands or, you know, 2 feet or whatever, and I'm like, this won't translate for you, and I don't always know how to explain it for you, so you're gonna have to help me out.
Yeah, it's, I think you're just always in that mindset of like, you know, there are challenges and stuff. I'm gonna talk about myself again because I feel like I have to like relate to it. Like, I didn't grow up disabled, but I grew up being more disabled over time. But like, for some reason, I never really thought of myself as disabled though. Like, I knew I had limitations of things, but I would never in a mindset of like I couldn't do something because of my disability. And I feel like some of us just give up right away because like, oh, I'm disabled, I can't do it. And I'm just like, if I have a goal in place, what do I have to do to get there? And I'm gonna do it anyway. You know, like, can I go to space? No. Can I climb a mountain? Kind of ish. Is it realistically possible? No. But like, I think there's so many things you could do, and I always never thought of myself as a disability person. I think that helped me a lot being confident with myself. I think a lot of people, being disabled kind of a negative term. I know there's, like, I'm sure you've seen like, oh, disability is not a bad word and such. And I get what they're trying to say, but I think I think the word is not bad, but I think the mindset of it is bad. I feel like we push ourselves in the box, and I don't really want to do that. Like, I want to, like, mingle with regular society people. Like, so before I take the mic away from you, is there anything you want to say, promote, any words of wisdom, the winning lottery numbers? The mic is all yours.
Oh, firstly, I want to say thank you for having me on. Like, I've actually really loved this chat. I think I love that we've been able to have completely different viewpoints and also still respect each other's viewpoints and learn from that. I think, is that not...
I'm blocking
really
you right after this
beautiful thing
episode. What are you talking about?
That's just rude. That's rude. Like, I don't think you should. But I thank you for having me on. I think it's been really great. And yeah, if you wanna follow me, you can find me at Brooke Millhouse, or if you want to follow my podcast, it's at Disabled and Proud Podcast, and it's on Apple, it's on Spotify, and it's on YouTube with full captions.
Okay, thank you, Brooke, so much for giving me your time and expertise. Thank you, everyone, for listening and watching. You can follow Brooke. All the links from her will be in the description below. Thank you, everyone, and have a good night. Bye-bye.